This is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Blue Bear Flutes. Of course, our website, bluebearflutes.com, and you'll find Blue Bear Flutes all over the place in social media and everything alike, eventually in the history books. So anyway, today I wanted to share something with you all that some of you may be interested in and some may not. But over the years, we've had countless people ask about this subject, so I thought I'd bring it up. It might be a good something to talk about. Just a little FYI about myself. I have been kind of omnivorous most of my life, I guess I should say. I never really ate a lot of greens until not too long ago. But about 7 years of my life I was vegetarian, and my family and I were vegetarian, and we weren't like what people call strict vegetarian. We just we would eat eggs and fish, and otherwise everything else had to be plant-based. Having said that, we have a lot of people ask us for vegan options for the flute. And for those of you who may not know, what that means is they want a flute without a leather tie on it, or any type, some people go to the next step, or any type of animal products, including beeswax, which beeswax, of course, is like an animal byproduct, and they make a lot of it, and you don't have to kill them like you do the cow to get the leather, but there are people who prefer not to use beeswax, and I respect that. So we have options for everybody. We use carnauba wax whenever we get a request like that. I personally prefer beeswax. Like I said, it's a byproduct. It's not really damaging the bees. As a matter of fact, it can go bad. It expires, so you have to use it. I mean, this is coming from as a beekeeper. You know, it can have problems that eventually in the hive will just, you know, go bad. You know, like if it gets wax moths, or if it has beetles that turn the honey bad, it'll actually turn the honey and turn the wax bad. So there's a lot of things to think about. But that aside, there are a lot of people who just would prefer not to have leather cord on their flute. Now, of course, originally a Native American flute would, of course, been made with usually a leather flute tie, and would have probably had either dog, deer, bear, I don't know what other kind of animals we used for grease a lot, but there were a lot of other animals we used for grease, to say the least. So if it is a Native American flute, therefore, and that's why the bear fat that we put on our flutes, we call it, is actually made out of beeswax and a few other oils mixed together. The idea of not using leather had always been intriguing to me. I personally, when I was vegetarian, wasn't just because of my respect for the animals, which I do have a lot of respect for animals and the lives that they have, and the way that they get treated sometimes in the food industry is pretty, well, the word pretty shouldn't even be in the universe of what it is I would say about it. It's bad anyway. I was going to say pretty bad, but it's not pretty bad. It's awful. I mean, it's horrendous. That aside, myself, my personal ideas and beliefs is that the leather here, made out of the skin of the cow that it came from, the cow was going to be killed. The leather was a byproduct, so we would have thrown it away had they not had a market for it. Cows are not slaughtered today for their skin. They're slaughtered for their meat. So it's not the purpose of the thing so much as it is the principle behind it. They don't want to support the idea of having leather on their products, and I'm completely understanding, believe you me, that makes sense on a lot of levels. However, of course, traditionally made out of leather. That aside, the biggest difficulty as a flute maker getting this request wasn't saying, okay, I'll do that. That was the first thing I thought, you know, that sounds like a great idea. Let's see how we can switch over and not ever do that again. But the biggest difficulty was finding a viable product or material that could replace this. So it sounds easy, but it's really not. If you have ever tied a cotton cloth cord on your flute, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's never tight. I mean, this thing here, we've had customers in the past who have said, I can't untie your flute block because it's tied on so tight. Of course, you can untie it. You might have to put a little effort into it, but we tie them down tight so that it doesn't slip around and have any kind of issues. But the leather makes a good tie for this because it gives a little. It's a little flexible, not too flexible, but a little flexible. And of course, different grades of leather, different types of leather are more and less flexible. And so we have kind of evolved with our business and found leather that works really great for making flutes. it's not so easy to find a cord per se that is great for making flutes. However, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. It's taken some time and expertise and practice and trial and error, and you know, we've been doing it for years now, but you know, down the road, I found out what it takes to make this happen. And really, let me cut a piece of this off and show you. This cord is, I believe, for some type of knitting. It can be used for a number of things. We actually use it for our flute bags, and it's ironic that I had it in the shop all this time. It took me such a long time to find it, because we use this stuff for flute bags on a regular occasion, whereas the idea of finding something to tie a flute block down with that's not going to slip, that's going to be a viable, non-animal derived source, it was tricky until this eventually just struck me, and I thought, you know, this would be great. The reason that this works, and this is how you want to search for what it is that you're going to use to tie your flute block down, if you're vegan, or if you're a flute maker and you have vegan customers, and you're concerned, you know, about having a way to tie it down and keep the block on really firm, this is what you have to do. This cord is not just braided, it is interbraided. It's actually woven around in a circle. The center of this cord here is hollow, and then there are braids on the outside. It is made from, it looks like acrylic. It could be, it's not a polyvinyl, it's not like Dacron. It's a very fine little fiber in each one of these braids, but each one of the cords within the braid, but they're woven around in a circle. And I imagine if you looked, you could find a cotton that would do that. But this is the problem with cotton. Like leather, it gets affected by humidity and condensation and moisture and temperature and all kinds of stuff like that. And when it gets wet, it does that even more so, because it is incredibly organic. And I mean organic in the greatest sense. It is incredibly biodegradable. It is just, everything about cotton is beautiful on every level, and I love it. It's an amazing, amazing product. Native American cloth and clothing at its greatest. Look up weft wrap, my favorite. But anyway, so to find something that would work, we searched everywhere, and I've tried everything, including some elastic type materials, which they seem good at first, but they don't solve the problem. Anyway, leather, as I mentioned, will also be affected by the temperature. If it gets cold outside, like really cold, and this thing sits in it for 12 hours or so, this leather strap will become really flexible and move around. If it gets really hot outside, it'll get incredibly tight, and then the next day it's going to be loose. So there's a lot of stuff to think about. This cord here, though, once again, this isn't necessarily the solution you need. You need something like this. This works great for me, by the way, but you may decide in your area that you can't find it or whatever, but you just got to look for something that has the same feature. It's designed like what we call a Chinese finger trap, because as you pull on it, it gets tighter and the braids constrict against themselves. And the minor amount of flexibility of this plastic, basically, which is what this cord is made out of. I wish I could tell you more about it, but you know, it's kind of limited. I believe it's maybe a ray or some kind of poly, but I'm not really sure. The trick is, though, that it's not organic, and it is not super flexible by itself. Like one of these little braids is not super flexible by itself, but when they braid in together and they pull tight against themselves, it gives a little, like the leather does. And so, and I'll show you right here, because I'm very pleased with this product myself. I'm just not currently offering it on all of our flutes, and you know, I'm sure my vegan friends out there are like, why don't you do that? This stuff is substantially more costly, and of course it's not about the money. It's just a matter of the product, you know. It's made out of something that is not biodegradable, where leather is biodegradable, and therefore is something that is, you know, potentially hazardous to the environment, what have you. Because it is made out of what it is, and you may not believe in this either because it puts off minor CFCs or whatever they're called, not the CDC, right? But anyway, we just singe it a little bit, not really so much that it smokes, and then after you singe it, the ends are pretty well there. They're not going anywhere after that. But when you wrap it around your flute, it's substantially larger than the leather, and we, of course, cut the leather to whatever size we want. finding the right size braid for your flute might be another thing. Because this is a round cord and it has also been pulled by the machines that build it until it's flat. It actually is flat somewhat like our leather lace and does lay a certain way. But as I just put some tension on it there, check it out, put it in my mouth. Just like that, and then pull a little bit of a loop in it like we usually do to keep that knot tight. It's pretty well there. It's not going anywhere. Actually, the stuff that I have has this two-tone kind of color to it. The braids go down in a neat line, and it looks pretty good, I think. Once again, not changing over just yet. I'm sure we'd probably have more people complain than revel in the idea. But I think it looks great. I think it does. It does bring it up to a little bit more modern looking, and that's probably a reason a lot of people may not like it as much. But the block this block is not moving. It is tighter than it was with my piece of leather that I cut. And the tighter the block sits on the flute, really the better the seal, and the better the seal usually, if the flute's made well like these are, then the better the sound. So it's got a lot of benefits, it really does. I'm hoping that I switch over to something like this one day in the future, but for right now, even though it is beautiful, it has its own nice little color to it and what have you, and I could probably get a solid color that may not be so distracting, though I do prefer the stripes for myself. It still doesn't look as Native American fluty, I guess you should say, as it would with the leather. But there again, you know, it's like my dad used to say, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. You know, you get something and you lose something. So anyway, I hope this helps you figure out a good option if you're vegan and you're trying to find a way to tie something on your flute. If you are ordering a flute from Blue Bear Flutes and you ask us for something other than a leather tie or, you know, vegan friendly tie, this is exactly what we've been doing for some time now, and we appreciate you very much for helping out with this idea too, of course, because like I said, it's something I like. It's very novel to me. You know, if you've got customers and you're a flute maker and you're trying to find a solution, and even as a flute maker, you may decide, you know, I'll be honest with you, I mentioned this is costly, but truthfully, per square foot, I'd be willing to bet you this is a lot cheaper than leather lace is. Yeah, so it's a lot less work, so I'm talking myself into it as we're having this video here. I hope all of you are doing well. I hope that this video finds you well, and I hope that you have some great experiences with your Native American flute playing and making, and I hope you come back to see us again very soon, as we have so many of these types of videos. If this is the first video of Blue Bear Flutes you've ever seen, you got a lot more to look at. So anyway, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out for Blue Bear Flutes and bluebearflutes.com. We will see you again very soon. Y'all take care.